Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, where we will explore what it means to work, live, and play in the Bayou Region. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the people and experiences that make our region such a special place to live and work. On each podcast, we will talk to individuals who are making our region grow and go, who are making strides in uplifting our community. This is a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. I'm your host, Kristine Strickland, Chancellor here at Fletcher Technical Community College. And today's guest wears multiple hats that we are going to dive into and explore a little bit. But I am happy to welcome to the podcast Representative Joe Orgeron, who is also the Executive Director of Restore Retreats. So again, multiple hats, legislator, executive director, so much things going on in your life, it sounds like. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kristine. Thank you very much.
Great to have you here. Well, we're going to get started with getting to know you a little bit better with our 5 and 5. Are you ready?
Ready.
Ready. Okay, here we go. What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Astronaut.
Yeah? Okay. And decided not to pursue astronauting?
No, actually, or the boat business until the downturn, and then I got involved in physics, space physics. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually, before being an astronaut, design spacecraft. Oh. So that's what the physics degree at Nichols was a springboard to get to a university for graduate school where I could design spacecraft.
All right. I am excited to talk a little bit more about that because we have a little bit of, I think, of a connection on that that I want to talk about.
All right.
All right. Number 2, favorite movie and why?
All of the Star Trek, Star Wars, space, obviously, but recently the primarily the Star Wars 9 series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like the prequels?
I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. You can get behind Jar Jar Binks?
I can.
Really?
Well,
that's controversial.
Everybody has that.
I know. Okay. I am a Star Wars fan too. And I do like the Star Trek movies. I like the newer ones as well as the older ones. So good pick.
Gene Roddenberry's original premise of an international global Earth or, exploring was, was to basically soften down racial and socio-economic, barriers and stuff. So it was good.
Wonderful.
I liked it.
Okay, something that you've gotten to experience or do in your life that you never imagined that you would get to do.
Super Bowl, Saints.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Were you in the building?
For the Saints, whenever they won, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And every home game and every playoff game I got to go to in that year. That was the only year in my life that I went to every Saints game. And I pre-purchased tickets just on the chance.
Really?
And I went, and they won.
Oh, my gosh. What an amazing experience that had to be.
It was.
Very
and after
cool.
the win, the 4 people that were with me, I directed them to an exit that was not a legitimate. It was an exit, clearly marked exit, but it was not one that the public was supposed to use. And we ended up in the tunnel with the players.
Get out of town. Oh, my gosh. How cool was that?
That was very cool.
Did you get to high-five everybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you really?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Did anybody ever come up to you and say, what are you doing here?
Cracking the barricade. Let's get out of here before. It was
Man.
a fantastic experience.
Was it like a premonition? Like, how did you know that was going to be the year that you were like, I got to make every game. I'm going to pre-purchase these tickets?
No, it was, we had season tickets and we had gone like 3 years before, almost making every game. Yeah. And 2009, we said, well, let's try to make it. And then that was the year that they did it. So,
holy cow.
So now it's kind of like one and done, like move on.
You're good.
I'm good.
Are you still a season ticket holder?
No.
No. Okay. I used to be too, and I'm not anymore, but I'm looking forward to the new coach. Maybe he can turn things around for us.
Let's hope.
Yeah, for sure. All right. You can have dinner with any person in the world. Who are you dining with?
President Donald Trump.
Okay. Yeah. And you want to tell us why? Is there something you want to ask him or just want to get to know him?
Intriguing, not a politician ascending to the highest level in politics. Some politicians call it cutting the line, and basically how he got there, and the art of the deal, just understanding a little bit better.
Okay. And last of the 5 and 5, now this one's intriguing. Favorite thing to cook?
Persian.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me, what does a Persian meal look like? What are you making?
Basmati rice, kebabs, lamb kebabs, beef chicken kebabs, grilled tomatoes, pita breads, hummus.
Oh, you're making me hungry.
Yogurt. Whenever I was getting my PhD in Dallas, there were 25 people in the class that I graduated. 5 were Americans, 10 were Chinese, and 10 were Iranians. So we would bring crawfish from down the bayou. They'd come eat, and then they would say, "You need to come over for kebabs." So that's how I got into that.
Wonderful. And I guess they taught you how to cook it authentically.
They taught my wife how to cook it.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
She still does today.
Wonderful.
Still my favorite meal.
Excellent. Well, that's good. I didn't know that about you. Thanks for sharing all of that information. So let's take a minute and we'll pivot and talk a little bit about your day jobs.
Okay.
You have multiple ones of those.
Correct.
And maybe we can start with being a representative. I'm just curious, what propelled you to run for office? What was that thought process like?
If you remember, I was pretty much politically agnostic for most of my my college years and the beginning of my business years. I think with the passing of Obamacare, not on who it was or what it was, other than the fact that it was the first time that the federal government forced the populace to buy something. It was the first time that bridge had been crossed, and a lot of people. You remember there was a lot of Republican efforts to try to repeal Obamacare, and kind of a lot of spineless activities going on where they didn't actually get it all done. So many of my friends basically were kind of like leaving the Republican Party and like moving towards independent or no party. And I said, I'm going to steer into the skid. I'm going to become part of the Lafourche Parish Executive Committee, the local facet of the Republican Party, and see if I could change it, see if I could get good conservative Republicans to run for the offices. And one of the things right off the bat was our state representative, Jerry Truck Jusclair, was a Democrat, very conservative values, blue dog Democrat, but the party wanted to see a Republican in there. So working to get Reggie Bagala elected was something that we endorsed him and ran. And then, of course, COVID took him away from us. Yeah. And shortly after that, I was getting asked, if they have a special election, would you consider to run? And never wanting to be that front political person, I really had to soul search and get with my wife, and ultimately decided, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to run for it. So that's how I got into it.
Awesome.
Here
That's fantastic.
5.5, 6 years later.
Yeah, no kidding. And our friend Reggie Bagala, man, what a great man.
Yes.
And I'm so sorry we lost him far too soon.
Absolutely.
But we are lucky, though, that you are representing us now for that seat and for that district. How long have you now been serving?
6 years.
6 years.
Or 5 years, I'm sorry. 2020 was the election. I think July 2020 was my election.
Okay. Let's do a little government history lesson for the folks in the audience. How many terms do you get to serve in the House?
3 4-year terms, 12 years total in the House of Representatives.
All right.
Then I'm termed out and could run for another elected position or Senate, et cetera.
And what committees do you serve on?
Originally, I shot for the stars and asked to be on natural resources and ways and means. And I had to pick what we call a lesser committee.
Right.
So judiciary was it. But I'm not really into lawyers and judges and jurisprudence, but judiciary is where all the alcohol, tobacco, vape products, cannabis and everything else, all the vice products I have to go through for our committee. So I basically put in for those 3 and got those 3.
Wow.
And still serve on those 3.
Fantastic. I know there's oftentimes sort of a little bit of a running joke about the number of attorneys and lawyers who serve in the legislature.
Yes.
So it's nice to have somebody who has a little bit of a different background bringing their expertise into
Whenever
that
I got
group.
put on judiciary, they immediately said we need a non-lawyer, someone with common sense to help this committee out. So.
Well, great. So let's talk a little bit about what do you see as your legislative priorities, or even the legislative priorities for our region?
My legislative priorities, I have a few things that to help some of the municipalities of Golden Meadow and people down the bayou. I'll touch on that later, but I think the primary focus of this legislative session is to continue to work to bring more insurance companies into the Bayou region. We had meetings prior to the last legislative session talking about, CPRA needs to continue to help with the communities by, better levees and barrier island protection, all the things that make our communities resilient to storm surge. At the same time, we did things to add what they call it, fortified roof and fortified home. That's two of the three-legged stool that business associations like the Independent Insurance Brokers Agency would tell us that we needed done. And the third one was some form of tort reform, Louisiana being highly litigious. The terms, one call does it all before you accept a quick check with me, put the hammer on them, and all of that. So we did pass a bill. There were several bills that addressed that fell to the wayside along the way. A lot of special interests and lawyers having their way with them. But at least one of them made it through both the House, the Senate, and got to the governor's bill, which unfortunately was vetoed. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that there's kind of like a resurgence of the two-legged stool on insurance doesn't bring lower prices and premiums. We still got that third leg that we still need to make progress on. So that's hopefully is what's going to be done. It's not my forte. I'm not on the insurance committee. I'm not a lawyer, that could either complain or fight against tort reform. Right. But I'm looking forward to be able to, if it comes to any of my committees, being part of the conversation.
Excellent, because that is a really important thing to our region in particular. It brings up a question for me, and I don't know that I've ever asked this, but I am curious. With one of the things you were talking about, so when we talk about the insurance market, specifically like homeowners and things of that nature, I know we've had difficulties statewide, right. But does it vary by region? So are there companies that might be writing policies within the state of Louisiana who are like, look, we will write north of I-10, but we don't have any interest in south of I-10? Does it break down like that, or is it just really state versus non-state? State versus
non-state for the most part. And following Ida, there were some that went bankrupt, some that just decided to pull out. And the way that I believe Tim Temple kind of casually explains it is, for each one company that pulled out, there might be two underwriting companies that have never written in Louisiana, and they're willing. They see it as a actuarial opportunity. All the weak links in the chain have been removed in an area. There's several good years of premium harvesting before they get into it. So they basically come to the fence line of the playground, the insurance playground, and they're there with their toys ready to cross into the playground. And whenever they see what was the substandard tax structure of Louisiana, or more specifically, the highly litigious state of Louisiana, they're like, why would I want to bring my toys in that playground with those bullies in there, and basically turn around and walk away. So it's to make the area and the state more inviting for more underwriting companies to come in, and thus more competition brings lower prices on premiums. Absolutely.
You mentioned just a few minutes ago sort of the legislation that you look to do, and it's sort of balanced between municipalities and local issues and challenges, as well as statewide issues and challenges. And I'm wondering, as a statewide legislator, how do you work with our local government officials to kind of move the parish and the region forward? What does that look like?
Always working with Lafourche Parish government on a lot of the coastal resiliency building, economic, Port Fourchon, making sure that that everything's done so that we have every economic advantage for our area, trying to edge out the other areas always. On the municipality state, helping with, municipal specific issues where possible. For my, the three municipalities in my district are Lockport, Golden Meadow, and Grand Isle. And for Grand Isle, it might be flooding on the road, trying to get better drainage, which is also to some extent Lockport's issues as well that I help them with capital outlay projects. And for Golden Meadow, there's a desire to be able to maybe have a transportation alternative path along LA1, which is much less traveled now, along the bayou, the 30-mile-an-hour zone. And there's a lot of golf carts that now people travel around, and I think they want to make it properly legal. So that's one of the things that I may do on the municipal level. At the state level, I've also been asked, that kind of ties in the hurricane and the damaged houses and the demos that's now going to condemnation hearings and the demolition. With demolitions, and there's usually secessions that have to be done if an elderly relative has passed away, and we have a lot of sub $125,000, and the state of Louisiana had passed a law that allowed notaries. Now, you don't have to be a lawyer, you could be a notary, and you could do a secession for a family if the value of the estate is below a threshold.
I did not know that. Oh.
It is. It's a low-cost solution to be able to just resolve for property sales, and then, get those properties back on the books as a valued property that you could bring in property tax and income and stuff like that. And the problem is that whenever the legislature passed the allowance for notaries to do these secessions, they never made the change to allow notaries to get the death certificates from the state. So the death certificates have this big long check box of, are you a son, niece, nephew, or a lawyer or other? And if the other is checked and they put notary, they get denied. So one of the bills that I'm going to be running this year, this session, is to make it possible for the notaries in those low-value secessions to be able to get the death certificates.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, kind of clear the books.
Yeah, right. That it sounds like it was like missed thing, but when you roll it down to practicality and how the work gets done, it's a little problematic. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about how your area is recovering. What do you see? Are things good in the area? Are there still things that are challenges this after all these years?
Yeah, 3+ years later, I still see recovery things that are still broken, and it's just a strive for normalcy. I know it's out of sight and it's mostly out of mind with people, but is the marsh. That's where my coastal restoration love comes. It was not until I rode the levees with Wendell Curall after the storm and just wanted to pat him on the back and tell him, the levee worked. But he was like, look, the marsh, it sacrificed its life for that storm surge attenuation, and now it's gone. And a repeat performance of Ida would basically be very detrimental. So right now, doing the coastal restoration, staying on top of CPRE and all the projects specifically that benefit the Terrebonne Basin and the Barataria Basin are very, very important, that we see the maximum effort be put in to get it done.
So to that end, are there things that you can be doing that will help will help the marsh, will help the ecosystem? What can you do there?
Well, on the Natural Resource Committee, I'm vice chair of the Natural Resource Committee, and that's one of the committees that in Transportation in both House and Senate, that the CPRA annual plan, which is basically the approval of how they'll spend their next tranche of BP oil spill money, what projects get prioritized. And I can tell you that there are projects all the way from Sabine, Calcasieu, all the way wrapped around to St. Bernard and on the North Shore. But, the Terrebonne Basin and the Barataria Basin are two of the most productive, yet at the same time rapidly eroding basins. So getting that fresh water reconnected in there primarily from the Atchafalaya for the Terrebonne Basin and from the Mississippi in the Barataria Basin are making sure that those projects are kept at high priority and their funding remains available to them. CPRA has turned out to be a very efficient agency as far as the spectrum of efficiency, between whenever you throw in Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, Department of Health, and all the other ag and all of that in there. CPRA, the more money you throw at them, the more dredges, excavators, bulldozers you actually see. Tactile, real stuff happening.
And as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, I know that you're very much advocating for our region and for our communities, and especially the communities that you represent more specifically. And I would imagine just about every other legislator across the state is doing a very exact same thing for their area. How is it, give us some inside scoop, right? How is it that you ensure that legislators from the northern part of the state, Bossier Parish, up in the Monroe area, how do you make sure that they understand the pressing needs, right, of our portion of the state to get people to vote for things that we need that are going to be helpful to us and to keep things like the dollars, the CPRA projects kind of at the focus for everybody? What does that look like?
Well, first of all, there's the one-to-one relation where you're, whenever you're you may be in committee and you may be tete-a-tete with somebody going on at a, head-to-head and fighting with someone. But it's very much like some of those cartoons from past with the sheepdog and the wolf and whenever the bell rings, then they go have lunch together and they resume it right after. I
do remember that cartoon. That was a great cartoon.
It's very much like that. It's not like that in Washington, my understanding is. Okay. But in Baton Rouge it is. And basically having those personal relationships so that they understand how much these topics mean to you. Another case in point would be the November 5th amendment that was on the ballot, which was to roll in all of the above energy to be dedicated, just like oil and gas had been done 20 years ago. And I did like 40 interviews, radio shows, newspaper, TV interviews across the state, many of them in Shreveport, Bossier City, and Monroe radio stations and TV stations, explicitly to talk about that. I call them my dry-footed legislators who still think, oh, come on, man, you going for some more money after Ida? Haven't y'all figured that? Haven't y'all gotten enough yet already? And I'm like, no, still, it's an ongoing thing. And the BP oil spill dollars will run out in 2031. That'll be the last of them. So we need to have these alternative revenue streams to be able to make the master plan, the 50-year master plan, continue on.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking a lot about coastal restoration, and I know that's a passion of yours and the work that you do at Restore Retreat. First of all, let's start off basics. What is Restore Retreat?
Restore Retreat's a 25-year-old nonprofit based Houma, Terrebonne, Bayou Lafourche, and Grand Isle area, started by everyday people and industry leaders who saw the clarity of the abundance of our natural resources, our sportsman's paradise right here on both sides of Bayou Lafourche, on the Terrebonne side and the Barataria side, and saw that it was productive in energy, commercial fishing, recreation, and tourism, and that it was rapidly eroding. There's no other way to say it. Whenever the Army Corps of Engineers successfully tamed the mighty Mississippi and put those levees in place to stop the annual flooding, it was literally like putting a tourniquet on your thigh and cutting off the blood supply to the estuary. So we've been seeing and living on Sportsman's Paradise, which is basically going through a very slow, almost unperceivable to most people, on people's day-to-day eye, of an estuarial necrosis.
Wow.
As we foot's turning blue, then it's turning green. Don't worry, we'll amputate it. We'll get you fitted with a prosthetic foot. And it's like, wouldn't it be better just to take off the tourniquet and allow the blood flow? So the reintroduction, you hear several projects now talking about reintroduction of the Maurepas Swamp and the Atchafalaya, basically getting that fresh water, sediment-rich fresh water to percolate back through the wetlands and build it up, because marsh always is subsiding. I mean, it's basically wet sponges that are constantly being compressed. And in our case, we levee around some of the sponges, and then that sponge dries up. So that's why you get the subsidence in houses and stuff inside the leveed areas. But outside the leveed areas, it's still subsiding. And without the continuous flow and reintroduction of more sediment every year to just put a thin veneer and a layer year after year on top of it, that's how you maintain a marsh. And if you stop that annual successive layers, basically eventually we'll see what you see every time you pass over the Leeville Bridge. That marsh is sinking a little bit every year, goes under the water, succumbs to salt water and deteriorates and causes open water. So in my 50-something years passing over that bridge, I've seen that marsh deteriorate. Yeah. And I'm just looking for what's the solutions? And what has been determined is to basically utilize the great work of CPRA in what we call barrier island restoration, land bridges, marsh, strategic marsh creation projects, and river reintroduction, so that basically you're letting the fresh water in and you're using the land bridges and the marsh and the barrier islands as, for a better term, baffles to basically slow the water down. As it moves fast, it carries the mud and the sediment, but as it slows down, that's what causes the sedimentation and accretion of land.
And then it basically sits down and
then
takes
plants
a seat
grow
there.
on it, and then you have what's important to the people that live inside the levee systems, which is I want that levee to survive the storms. Even if it's for one day a year, we need it to survive. Well, in order for it to survive, it's not good for it to be directly open to the Gulf of Mexico. That the waves from the Gulf would basically crash and destroy. So having that storm surge attenuation, my hometown, Golden Meadow to Rouge, we have 18 feet of elevated protection on the south side and only 12 on the north side. So that's 6-foot differential.
Yeah.
And that is expected. The marsh is expected to attenuate that storm surge. And we kind of lost a lot of that marsh, so got to get it back in there.
Yeah, so it makes it vulnerable for future.
Absolutely.
It withstood the test of time that time.
Correct.
But the future. So let me ask a question, because I am curious then. So if we sealed off the Mississippi to prevent flooding,
right?
But we're talking about kind of reopening some things, I would anticipate that there are folks who have concerns that they're going to flood again. Is that fair, or has technology and advancements in engineering improved to the point where we say, look, what happened way back when
Correct.
we made this initial decision is really not the threat that it was at that time? What does that look like?
All right. On one hand, the mighty Mississippi has busted open a natural crevasse on the eastern bank in Buras. It's called Neptune Pass. There was a levee, and it basically busted open, and then some of the river is flowing out onto the eastern side, and it's building a marsh, brand new fresh marsh. The projects that we're looking at with CPRA basically have gated structures, so we have full operational management, full operational control, and the gates are variable. So it's finding the right balance through this operational management schema on what works best for both building more marsh and at the same time, and in that marsh build the incubator areas, the nursery areas for brown shrimp, white shrimp, speckled trout eggs to grow redfish. Basically, maximize the land building capabilities while putting a minimal detriment to the commercial fisheries, the oystermen, et cetera. Yeah. So that's the balance that, surprisingly enough, not enough modeling has been done. And hopefully with the new AI and stuff like that, we could burn up some CPUs and put some models to work and find some good answers to those questions.
Huh. That's really fascinating. And I think that's one of the things we don't think a lot. We think about our homes, we think about our communities, but we also share a whole ecosystem with, natural wildlife and all of those things that have to be kept into balance when you're looking at all these projects. There's so many things. It's almost mind-boggling, the amount of considerations, right, that you have to take in account when you look at these projects?
In 1 or 2 lifetimes, or if you want to do the 100 years, I mean, 1927 was the last time that we had a major flood from the Mississippi, and it was basically choked off, and then tourniquet was put on. So we're right at 100 years. And so basically in 2 or 3 lifetimes, or, my grandfather, father, and myself actually saw a phenomenal difference between those 3 generations on what Sportsman's Paradise looks like to us.
On the Restore Retreat, you talk a little bit about business and industry and private citizens who've come together. How do you continue to work with business and industry and the local communities to kind of advance the work that you guys are doing?
The energy companies that work out of Port Fourchon want to be able to give back to the local communities. They want to be basically financially philanthropic in making sure that resiliency projects occur, and they want to be hands-on. So that's Shell, Chevron, Woodside Energy, Loop, especially, even the Greater Lafourche Port Commission, that's a political subdivision, but nonetheless very interested in being involved and hands-on on these projects. We also work with CCA, the Coastal Conservation Association. They're doing reefs and habitats. We work with companies like Danos here, who basically, in addition to all their energy service industry work, build what we call Cajun coral, which is the 3D printed cement blocks that we're able to put out in the marsh to act as wave attenuations for some of the projects. Shoreline stabilization is the term that we use. So we have a good group that works, and Restore Retreat really focuses on CPRE comes in, does a multi-million-dollar project. They're kind of maybe shorted due to inflation on not being able to put all the vegetation as the final accoutrements on the project that they want. And Restore Retreat steps in, goes engage an oil company and says, we want to do a volunteer project. We'll get 2 for 1 because you're just going to buy the plants. The labor will be volunteers. They love it. They get exposure. And we go in and we bring in 40 people to come help us do a planting and stuff like that. So that's how I see Restore Retreat work. And of course, we also go out to the schools and, during World Wetlands Week and basically talk with the schools about the crisis, the land loss crisis in Louisiana, and explain to them about master plan and CPRE's efforts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we work, of course, legislatively, which is not a hard reach for me in my position as Restore Retreat Executive Director to basically push political figures in the importance of Louisiana's master plan and coastal restoration and resiliency.
So in that educational sector, I know that you do some stuff here with us at Fletcher,
Yes.
and you also do some stuff with Nichols. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of things do you do in partnership with
tabling, having materials there. Recently, we went to Mr. Jonathan Foray's Wetlands Discovery Center.
Yeah.
They brought in, I don't know, it was like 8 or 10 busloads of 5th graders, 6th graders. And basically, Miss Polly and I, my project coordinator, we had all of the tools of the trades, the jet sleds, the dibbles, the power augers, all the tools that we use to plant and stuff like that in the field, the walkie-talkies, the drone that we fly to do things, and just do a kind of a show and tell, and talk to them about it.
With the community support you mentioned, if somebody out there was listening and says, I'd like to help, like go plant some plants, how do they get involved? What's that look like?
RestoreRetreat.org and go to contact us. Okay. And those will go to a crazy long, complicated bureaucracy of 16 desks, 236 feet under the ground. No, comes directly to me, okay. And I'll make sure that you're on the list for the next volunteers. That's a Doge joke.
I like it.
Yeah,
So what are you most excited about that Restore Retreat is doing? What's coming up that gets you out of bed every morning and you're like running to the office because you're so excited about it?
The 25 years, I haven't been in it that long, but since taking over, kind of in their 21st year, so now I'm looking forward to the 25 year and having a silver celebration sometimes later this year. and continuing to do some of the project works that help. One that's still out there and remains to be done is planting roseau cane along the western bank in Lafourche Parish, the levee system. There's an area of the levee system that is exposed to open water, and working with Nick Mathern and the South Lafourche Levee District, we're going to buy some roseau cane.
Okay. And so putting on my non-agricultural hat, is there something special about that type of cane? I've not heard of that type of cane before, I don't think.
We're expecting that area it's already somewhat brackish, turning hopefully more fresh water over the subsequent years, especially whenever we open up this pump station in Donaldsonville that's supposed to put more water down Bayou Lafourche.
Right.
Hopefully more water will flow down Grand Bayou and along the western side of Bayou Lafourche's levee district.
And so that cane would be the best
And
there.
the cane would be just something, they'd done riprap, broken concrete, they had done vinyl sheet pile, but a nature-based solution seems to be the one that works best in nature because it provides additional habitat, ecological habitat. That's what we try to do. Restore Retreat hosted someone from Japan because he worked on coastal protections and barriers and levees after the Fukushima incident. And he said in Japan, everything we built was gray infrastructure. And I said, gray infrastructure is like rebar, concrete. It was just gaudy, hardcore protection. And he says, I'm here because I was told I needed to come to Louisiana to understand how nature-based solutions are working. Y'all have earthen levees, and y'all do, the oyster shell recycling to build reefs to help protect the shorelines of our levees and stuff like that. So it brings people from all over the world to see how we do it here in Louisiana.
So very interested to know. I had an opportunity a few years ago to go over to the Netherlands and to see some of the things they were doing. And I know that we've done a lot in partnership with them, learning from them coming over, learning from us. It sounds like this is really a challenge internationally that you're seeing a lot of countries dealing with. What is the thing that you feel like we've learned from others that we've put in place here that's been maybe the most impactful? And then what do you think that we share with people in other countries that's making the biggest difference?
Well, the Dutch, I think the thing we learned is about land reclamation. That's what they're big on finding areas that could be levied in and be used for agricultural reasons and stuff like that. And I mean, here we have Cloverleaf Farms, which basically it wasn't reclaimed, it was just preserved long term for sugarcane production and things like that. I know that there's places in the Netherlands that are basically what you would call outside of the protected areas where they build houses, but the houses have, I guess you could call them concrete basements that are literally that the house floats on. It's basically it's a subdivision where all the houses are some kind of way tethered. Think of it as a marina where the land goes up to your doorstep. So all the houses kind of move with floodwaters and stuff like that.
Oh, well, I was going to say that kind of plays into one of the things that I learned while I was there that I thought was really fascinating. They talked about learning to live with the water.
Correct.
And that sometimes the water takes the land.
Right.
And then sometimes the water gives the land back, and building to allow sort of that natural ebb and flow in that. And I just thought that was really fascinating, the way that they built. I didn't get to see those, but that plays in my mind with what they were talking about, right?
Yes. And, the thing, it brings up the one thing that's unique about Louisiana than almost anywhere else in the world. I'm sure there's a few exceptions, but if you go to the what they call the LSU River model in Baton Rouge, one thing that really, every time I'm there, that strikes out is just how flat Louisiana is, or how, if it wasn't for the Mississippi River doing this riverine alluvial deposition, in other words, spewing like a fire hose over 10,000 years and spreading land out, the land that we live on here, that we're currently standing on, basically Louisiana would stop somewhere around Baton Rouge. So everything south of Baton Rouge becomes extremely flat in that area. And even though it's that much of a difference, think about all the industry that's south of Baton Rouge, and in Houma and Port Fourchon is on the coast, but Homa's Gibson and Morgan City and all the industrial manufacturing that we did for the offshore energy, hydrocarbon harvesting and stuff like that. And basically having these hurricanes, people say, well, where do you live in? You say South Louisiana. Where do you live in South Louisiana? I say, well, I live in an area where even after the storm makes landfall, it still doesn't know it stepped on the ground yet. It takes a while before it realizes the physical relief and starts affecting the storm. And that usually kind of gets a little attention that it's so flat down here that basically we kind of just live in that flat area, yet we have all that core construction infrastructure. So it's a rare location where levee districts, the Historous in New Orleans, the South Lafourche levee district, Morganza, the Gulf are very, very important for these areas to maintain our economic throughput for the nation and our state.
Absolutely.
If we don't restore, we'll have to retreat. And no one wants to have to drive and commute that far to work near the coast where this infrastructure needs to be built.
Right.
So we need to make the communities here. That was the fight for the amendment is, why y'all need more money down there? I said, because this is derived from funds that are derived from energy produced offshore outside of state waters. So the state really doesn't have any claim to it, but it's federal waters, but it would not come to fruition if it were not for the people who live in these coastal communities. So that money should go to help protect and make resilient those communities.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realize when you talk about it in its entirety, and we've had this conversation a few times on the podcast, is that, we have such a significant amount of our energy production that comes through Loop, Port Fourchon, right, comes up through the Gulf, up through the Mississippi, and really fuels the entire nation.
Absolutely.
But to your point, you have to have a workforce.
Correct.
And you have to have people who are able to do that work. And like you said, they're not going to drive. Nobody's going to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours one way to get to work and back. And so it is critically essential that we figure out how we maintain the opportunity for people to live and work in this community, because the work that they do is really important to everybody else in the nation, whether they recognize it or not.
I think you just now perfectly circled all the way 360 degrees back to insurance and affordability of housing of young couples trying to buy a house, making ends meet to just pay for the note and then getting hit with the price for wind and hail and flood insurance coverage. So that's the problem we have on the out-migration. And as a legislator, that's our job, is to basically stop the out-migration. That was the third extraordinary session, was to change the fabric of taxation in Louisiana to make us more palatable for people to move here.
No, and look, that is so important, because as somebody who came in from out of state, right, fell in love with the state, fell in love with the people and the culture and everything about Louisiana. And I know that there are so many people who live here who say, I want to stay. I want to be close to family. This is my home. This is my culture. Or even people who would come into this state to work,
right,
who would fall in love with it like I did. But financially, it's got to make sense. It's got to make sense for families. It's got to make sense for young professionals to be able to be here. So if we can pivot for a minute, I know that you have a strong interest in wind. And we've talked a lot on this podcast already about the importance of sort of the energy addition, energy diversification. Interested to hear your take. Where are we going? Where do you think this is all going to wind up in the future?
East Coast offshore wind, Gulf of Mexico offshore wind, two different ones.
Okay.
East Coast, high population density right along the coast. A lot of people live there. A lot of people need electricity. A lot of power plants that supplied them with power right at the coast being retired. Coal-fired plants having to rely on hydroelectric further in near Niagara Falls, being more costly to get it to the endpoints, the capillaries at the very endpoints of it. For them, having offshore wind off the coast and backfeeding those substations makes sense to them. Their prices on the electricity have been rising, so having offshore wind up there might make sense to them to be able to do it. Problem is that despite being on the water since the Pilgrims and whaling and shipping, they've never built anything offshore like an oil platform, like we've been doing for 80 years. So whenever they started to try to build the offshore wind, they really didn't know which way was up, and they really needed the Cajun ingenuity to go up there. So I was originally part of the first group of people that went up to the East Coast. Just me looking for other things to do with our Gulf of Mexico vessels. We were doing a lot of decommissioning. It was on the shelf. Felt like the glorified undertaker. And I said, let me go up to the East Coast and see. And I went up there to do some scientific coring for some climate scientists, and ended up getting 3 calls from 3 different wind farm people. And that's how I started to see the job parity between, for the guys on my boat, they don't care whether or not it's reaching down, the person signing the check is reaching down for oil and gas or reaching up for air pressure. They're operating the boat in the same manner, moving equipment, heavy equipment, large equipment from the dock offshore, doing constructions, rigging, scaffolding, welding, pipe fitting, all the same exact things of basically offshore energy infrastructure construction and support. So the job parity is what brought me to be involved and supportive of offshore wind. In the Gulf of Mexico, if it were to ever come into the Gulf of Mexico, I highly doubt you'll ever see a sign in your yard, my yard, or my neighbors that says, my house is powered with green energy from offshore wind, asterisk, and I pay 3 times more. We are awash in very cheap energy here in South Louisiana, and it is those petrochemical refining companies on the river. It's the Exxon, Shell, Valero, Marathon, Dow, DuPont, BASF that make those chemicals for a global market that they're looking for just a little bit more renewable in their energy portfolio. Like I said, they're here because energy is cheap, and they have highly energy intensive manufacturing processes. It's just that they're begging energy. Don't build a solar farm. Don't charge Joe and Kristine extra money. We as the corporation that needed this refinery, we need that energy. Just bump our 6% to 8%. And that makes our products that go out on the global market more competitive, because they do a lot more than just diesel, gasoline, aviation. They do all what we call precursor chemicals. They go into plastics and manufacturing things that pills need to be bathed in, or, chemicals that are required for other manufacturing processes.
So it's really not like it's an essential, like it sounds like on the East Coast. However, it is additive. It is something that adds on to the value that you get of being in Louisiana and having access to that sort of bump up in the energy sector.
For them, it might be residential, low energy prices. For us, it's all industrial. It's to make our industrial players happier in a globally competitive sense, make them more profitable to keep people working here. And I can tell you that people in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and those companies, they have meetings that I've heard economists go to those meetings in the Middle East, and whenever they're talking about low carbon solution energy, they basically circle the area between Houston, New Orleans, and Baton Rouge. And they're like, this is our target that we're trying to take market share away from. So that's why Louisiana needs to stay up on the front of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, to your point, and one of the things is, I just want to highlight when you were talking about the crossover with the jobs and the workforce. I think that that's one of the important things that we try to highlight here at Fletcher, is that a number of the jobs that you were talking about, we train for. And we sometimes hear students who say, maybe I don't want to go into the traditional oil and gas sector, or they're bright lights, big city. I see wind, I see solar, I see all of these interesting things. And fundamentally, they can come through Fletcher, learn those skills, and go to work in a variety of different environments, because there is so much overlap in the skills that they need. And so, if people are out there listening today, knowing that, Fletcher can prepare you for so many different paths that sometimes we think about just what's right in front of us in terms of jobs. but that the skills that you learn here are transferable to a lot of different environments.
Absolutely.
And a lot of different companies who need those exact skills that we're training for every day here.
Correct. Totally agree.
So we've talked about a lot of different things: insurance, environment, coastal, marshland, new energies. If you had to identify in the next 5 years the one challenge that we as a region need to be really focused on, what would you say that is?
It would probably be making it more affordable for young people to live in the areas near the coast, because we have a working coast that'll continue to be a working coast, and that's the thing we have to work on. The tax regime, lower taxes, to make it easier for people, get more insurance. So that's it. The coastal restoration work, stuff like that.
So if I'm somebody listening to the podcast or watching today on YouTube, and I hear that, what steps can I take as an average, ordinary citizen, knowing what you now know about being in the legislature and how things move? How do I plug in? How do I get involved? How do I help move things so that my kids can stay here?
My wish would be that all of my constituency, whenever we about to start session or as we get close to session, go to the legislative website and do what's called a bill search. Put the things that are in their job scope, the terms, the tags, that would be just common terms and of what things that they work with, whether you're a dentist or whether you're a doctor or whatever your thing is. Put it in the bill search and see if there's any bills that are going to be percolating through the legislature, and be active. Be an active participant in the representative republic that is our great country. I would rather my constituents be proactive and saying, I saw this bill. I'm not sure what it really is trying to do, but hey, that's easy. That's what the dreaded lobbyists are for. I know a lot of my constituents hate lobbyists, but trust me, if a constituent has a concern that a bill might affect their livelihood, I could read it, find the lobbyist that's probably either for or against that, and get a very, very quick, distilled, this is what it does, this is why we want to do it, this is what it won't do, this is what the fluff is, and get back to my constituent and say, and then learn from them, oh, no, that's not a good bill. All right, well, then I know, if there's consensus in the district, I know how to move on it. It'll make my job easier.
Right. So, and Representative Zarang was here earlier in the podcast, and that was one of the things that he said to everyone was that y'all do listen. You read the emails,
Absolutely.
you get the phone calls, you answer the phone, and you want to hear from your constituents about how they're feeling about these bills.
Right.
So people should not be afraid to pick up the phone and call you or send that email if there's something that they're feeling passionate about.
That's right. Like bow fishing.
Okay.
There's a lot of redfish fishermen that don't like the bow fishing. On one end of the spectrum, there's people that want to completely ban bow fishing altogether, run you out of business. And on the other side, there's y'all, the bow fishermen, who want to leave it exactly like it is. But there's I bet somewhere in the middle. Yep. There's somewhere, and I'll be somewhere in the middle telling the people who want to ban it, not going to happen. And then I'm also telling the bow fishing, charter fishing, leaving it exactly like it is, probably not going to happen. No. That's another example of doing the research and trying to get more information on it.
And the importance of compromise.
For
sure. So if somebody is out there and they're feeling pretty passionate about some piece of legislation, how do they get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
Call my district office.
Call your district office.
Yeah, you Google Joseph Orgeron State Representative. It'll come up. It'll put you in touch with 985-693-9000, which is my district office number. Ms. Dina will answer, my trusty legislative assistant. Awesome. Who has 20-plus years of doing this for my predecessor, my predecessor's predecessor, and that one's predecessor. So she knows how to get things done.
Yeah. That's important.
Very.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit now about, I did, again, some recon. And so I want to wrap back around to something you said at the very beginning. You were talking about astronauts and weather. So funny enough, my son was a physics chemistry major, and at one point got to go study abroad, and he was studying weather in outer space.
Okay.
And I heard that you also have some interest, or some point in your career was heavily involved in the study of weather. Is that accurate?
Out of high school, I got my pilot's license. You have to have a very good understanding of weather to be a pilot.
Okay.
So whenever I got to go for my doctorate, graduate school, you have to usually do like a TA, a teacher's assistant. And the first job I was offered was literally being magician's assistants to, there was one professor who did like physics experiments 101.
Oh, okay.
And I was literally set up the experiment, ta-da, guy, and then tear down the experiment and pick it up. And I did that for, I think, one semester, maybe two. And then I got offered, would I rather TA meteorology? Oh. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, absolutely. So I did that. I actually taught a few of the courses where the teacher, had to teach this particular lesson plan, was not there. I was allowed to teach meteorology, so I enjoy it. So
were you fascinated by the recent snowstorm? Or did you see it coming? Can you predict the weather?
Yeah, I saw it coming.
Yeah?
Yeah, it is what it is. And then being on natural resources, I really was interested in going to the Wildlife and Fisheries Commission meeting to find out where did they rank it scientifically, mathematically, how did they do that? And they actually have a formula of winters, how intense was this particular freeze compared to other ones. And it was it calculated to be right in the middle of the bell curve. So
really?
Yes. It was because it came on so quick. The water didn't have time to chill as much and even though we had fish kills, right, the detriment was not as bad as they expected. And there were people who came from like Lower Plaquemines Parish who had seen the fish kills and coming exactly for that same reason, to find out how bad is it, and was relieved to understand that, okay, we had fish kills, but it warmed up quickly afterwards, resumed back, and not as bad as we thought.
Huh. I am surprised.
It didn't get that cold.
Didn't get that cold.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, I know some people didn't realize, I know we've talked about it a little bit throughout the course of this podcast, that you have your PhD. What is your PhD in?
Applied experimental physics, high energy particle physics.
Okay. What'd you write your dissertation on?
My dissertation was first level triggering using neural networks in a scintillating fiber detector.
Okay. Is there a basic? Can you break that down for me? What does that mean?
High energy physics, they basically take bunches of particles in two rings, basically circulate them in two rings and find a spot where they collide them.
Okay.
And they do them so fast that the interesting collisions, those that can be written to tape, or we say written to tape, written to hard drive, right, for later processing, are about 1,000,000 to 1. So you have 999,999 crappy miscollisions to the one where the billiard balls basically hit schmack on, and really give you the fiery statistics. And the question was, how do we catch that one whenever it's all happening so fast? So I basically used the technology that was there for the detector physics, along with some artificial intelligence. So machine learning, neural networks, so AI, back in 1991.
Really? Okay.
So I was training neural network models and artificial intelligence models.
That's fascinating, because most people, I think, believe that AI came to be last year.
Right. No.
No, it's been around for a long time.
Been a long time.
And you've been really deep in it.
From the beginning.
Which is pretty cool. And you're a Nichols grad?
Absolutely. Go Colonels.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I think is so amazing, is that you have the opportunity to get a fantastic education, whether it's here at Fletcher or over at Nichols, that can propel you to go anywhere. the opportunities that you had to be involved, right, in your PhD program with things like AI before the general public even knew what that was.
Right.
And it all started here
Nichols was
in this region.
Nichols was a fantastic springboard for me academically. And that's because somebody forgot to pull out the 4-year physics degree out of the catalog whenever they were supposed to. So I got to Nichols and I signed up for it. I actually signed up for aeronautical engineering, but I told you I had my pilot's license. So I went up to sign up for aeronautical engineering at Nichols in the student union. And they said, oh, you're going to get your pilot's license first semester. I said, advanced placement, here you go. And they're like, no, you're going to have to take all those courses over again. Oh, wow. That's how the department makes its money. It's right there. Oh. And I'm like, my parents ain't going to pay for that again. So I put my pilot's license back in my pocket, looked across, saw physics, and I walked over there. And that's how I got into physics. And then 2 weeks later, I get a card that says, go to Dr. Ayo's office. So what did I do? I'm a freshman. And he's like, the 4-year physics degree was supposed to be taken out of the catalog before last, and it's still in there. So we're going to honor it, and you will be the last 4-year physics graduate from Nichols.
And you were, huh?
And I was. So for the first 2 years with nurses, anesthesiologists, engineers, a bunch of people in my physics class for the first 2 years, but the last 2 years was pretty much one-on-one.
I'll be darned. That is very cool. That's a cool story.
Let me tell you, that peer pressure kind of goes away whenever it's just you and the professor. It's like, you lost me from, equation 4 to 5. Go back. Right. We're not leaving until I get it.
Oh, my goodness. That's amazing.
It gave me a very good boost whenever I got to graduate school. The physics stuff, I had a better grasp than my cohorts. On the math, because math I had with regular advanced math people at Nichols, I struggled. So, but the physics, I flew through it pretty good.
Yeah. I have 2 physics. Both of my boys, physics and chemistry. So they have dinner conversations that just fly right over my head, but they seem very excited about it.
It's an excellent cerebral workout that basically allows you to touch on all forces of nature, all aspects of, people saying like, what you talking about? I'm like, plumbing is fluid dynamics, air conditions or, thermodynamics. So basically it gives you a very, very broad knowledge base.
Yeah. You make a great point because so many of our technical students are actually doing high-level math and science, but because it's in that applied setting, they're not going to walk in and say, I'm doing thermodynamics or fluid, dynamics, but in fact they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm supposed to ask you about the elevation for cacao plants versus mangroves. I was told that you'd have some insight on that.
Cacao plants?
That's what they said.
Really?
Yeah? Well, am I wrong?
No, maybe. I mean, that's cocoa. I don't know why cocoa and mangroves make a difference. But, I don't know. Whenever I worked at M&M Mars, we did crop forecasts. I used the artificial intelligence to do crop forecasts, and cocoa was one of the crops that we worked on, and but definitely mangroves. I'm learning a lot about where they need to be planted, for coastal restoration to build up, more resilient shoreline stabilization activities.
Can we use them over here? I know I go to Key West all the time.
That's red mangroves.
Okay,
we have black mangroves.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a difference.
And they're different. The reds basically have kind of like they're like a branch that's, a bush with a branch with big roots that do like this, whereas black mangroves sit in the dirt and have, I guess you could call them snorkels. They're little breathing tubies that are not tubes, but just fingers stick up vertically upwards, whereas the red mangroves are downward.
Gotcha. I had no idea. I learned something new today.
I learned that recently as well.
Okay. Well, good. All right. Last question I was supposed to ask you was, how's the offshore wind industry?
On the ropes right now with an executive order putting a full pause. Okay. But during the Biden administration, we had the pause on oil and gas. That was something that in our family business of offshore vessels, the offshore oil and gas lease sales were not anything that directly affected our business in any way, shape, and form. but it was definitely a forward-looking indicator that if you had active lease sale, oil companies are interested, then we may repower that old boat that we were going to put out to pasture, and we may rework it for, to live another 5-year cycle with the Coast Guard. And so now having the pause on offshore wind is a little detrimental to them in that it doesn't give them that forward-looking indicator. But at the same time, I think I got on stage for some of the offshore wind conferences, and basically during the Biden administration, and said that the administration was moving the industry at a reckless pace. Like they were accelerating it a little too fast.
Too fast.
Because there were some projects up on the East Coast that kind of had like a bid to the bottom on, I'll supply that energy cheaper than my competitor, and ultimately they had to cancel those power purchase agreements. So some of we still want to build a farm, but the agreement that we were working on to sell the power, we got to rip that up. There's no way we can make money off of that. Yeah. And that all came about during the Biden administration. So hopefully the pause puts a little bit more sanity in the economics, less reliability on government subsidies and incentives, and more on the true business nature of producing those electrons for, in the Gulf of Mexico's case, the companies that I said need them, and on the East Coast for those companies that put back power in the residential grid.
All right, piece of advice that you would like to leave with our listening and or watching audience, anything that you've learned along the way or just strikes you that you'd like to share?
Well, we've got some bridge problems down the bayou,
Yeah.
And I'm barking at DOTD. You remember the spectrum of efficiencies amongst agencies with CPRA on one end? I got to tell you, DOTD is kind of towards the other end over there. So, just know that I don't, whenever I took the oath to represent the people in Baton Rouge, they didn't give me a welding truck, so I can't fix bridges myself. And they didn't give me a tractor with one of those side-arm boom bush hogs to cut the grass on the side of the roads and stuff like that. So be lenient, know that I am doing everything I can to keep the pressure on the appropriate bureaucratic wheels in the government, state government, urgent request to all federal.
So folks out there, have patience, right? Reach out to your legislator,
yes.
Right? But know that they are working on the best interests of our entire community and doing everything that they can to help us.
Yeah, and if the vast majority of the constituency is in a direction opposite than you're petitioning for, I'm not going to feed you a line. I'll tell you straight up. You're swimming upstream on this one. So.
There you go. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us here today on the podcast. It has been just a real pleasure to get to know you better and to hear so many of your insights. For those of you who are watching or listening, again, we will have the websites and all of the information that was shared today in our show notes. And thank you all again for joining us for another episode of Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.